Hello and welcome to my October wrap up. So, since it is the month of Halloween, I thought it'd be kind of fun to do my wrap up in my Halloween costume. So, if you can't tell, I am Summer from 500 Days of Summer. And that is what I'm going to be dressing up tonight as, and I wanted to share with you in my wrap up. So, in the month of October, I read 4 books, and right before I shoot the video, I always go through the books that I read in October, and I realized that I hadn't finished any audiobooks, which may be the first month ever that I'm not going to be talking about an audiobook. Everything is going to be physical. I'm not currently liking the audiobook I'm reading right now, and it's been taking me forever to get through, but I'm almost done, so I guess it'll just go into November. But I guess we can just get started. Sorry, there was a bug. Okay, I guess we could just get started with the first book that I finished in October. So some of these books I don't want to talk about for that long, and it's because I really didn't like them. So let me just give you kind of a backstory. So a couple of years ago, I read the First Year trilogy by Robin Hobb, which is a trilogy that's in the fantasy realm, and she basically has this whole world. I think it's 16 books where she has 3 trilogies and a quartet kind of all looped together, but only 3 of those trilogies follow Fitzchivalry, which is the main character in the First Year trilogy. So when I first read it, I was totally obsessed with it, and I for some reason never picked, well, I tried reading the second trilogy that doesn't follow Fitz, and I really didn't like it. And then I finally picked up Fool's Errand, which is the first book in the Tawny Men trilogy, which is the next trilogy. God, how many times am I going to say that word? That follows Fitz, the main character. So I don't want to get into this book too much just because it's not it's the first book in a series, but not the entire realm. But all I'm going to say is that Robin Hobb, I think, is an exceptional writer. I think she's a really great fantasy writer. I'm just personally not really a fantasy person, if you don't know. So I kind of struggled with this because I really liked the first half of the book where we got to see Fitz again, and so it was really great to be reintroduced to his character and see what he's been up to in the past 12 or so years. But then once it got into the meat of the story, which is basically Fitz having to go and save the prince of this kingdom, or go find the prince of this kingdom, I just wasn't really into it. It was kind of it was just kind of fantastical and adventurous, and just was not usually what I like in books. And so, years ago I thought that I was gonna read all 16 books in the series, and now I think I'm gonna stop after this one. Although I'm not gonna say there's anything wrong with the book itself, because I think if you're a fantasy lover, I can totally see why you like this book. It's just, I don't know, I'm just not really into fantasy. And so, that was The Fool's Errand. And yes, it took me a minute. As well, I only read 4 books this month is because I have this chunky one and then another chunky one. I wanted to finish it though, because it does complete one of my 2021 goals, which is to read long books. And this book is 662 pages, so I definitely think this counts. But overall, probably going to be taking a little break from fantasy. So the next book I read in October, I did end up liking, and that was The Silent Patient by Alex Mikhal. Oh my god, I'm sorry. I did not practice. I was going to practice how to say his name, but I forgot. But this is the author. I believe he's Greek, but I really love this book. This was a thriller, if you don't know. So the basic gist of it is that this woman named Alicia has this seemingly perfect life, and then one day her husband gets home and she shoots him 5 times in the face, and then she goes silent. And this mystery of why did she shoot her husband? And so she then is at a psychiatric unit, and this forensic psychotherapist named Theo wants to get a job at the psychiatric unit so that he can talk to Alicia and unravel the story of why she ended up killing her husband. So I really like this book. Definitely a page turner. Thrillers are also kind of hit or miss for me, but I think the reason why I really like this book is because it was more of a psychological thriller, and I obviously like that the main character was a therapist, and not a very good therapist, may I add, because he kind of had this obsessive interest with his patient, which obviously is kind of weird for a therapist to have. But I really liked it. It was definitely very thrilling, and I definitely think it like definitely like made me want to keep learning more. I wouldn't say like the end was like, oh my god, like crazy unexpected. Like I feel like I could see parts of it coming, but I do think the way that the author ended it and how he kind of like wrapped it all up was done very well. So definitely a good thriller. I know this is like a very basic thriller. Like everyone's read it. I've never read it, but I ended up really liking it, and I wanted to like pick it up in the month of October because it's like, why not read a scary book? And this is the only October book that I ended up picking up. Okay, so the next book that I read in the month of October was Better Sex Through Mindfulness: How Women Can Cultivate Desire by Lori A. Brotto. This book basically is talking about the mindfulness practice when it comes to sex, obviously, and she talks a lot about like breathing exercises and just being like more engaged in life and basically like what mindfulness is all about. So this book took me forever to read because although I think it's like a really important topic, I just like didn't think there was enough meat there for her to write an entire book about it. And I feel like for something like this topic, if you're interested in it, I would just like research like a blog article that kind of gives you like the gist of mindfulness. And yeah, I thought this book was okay. It took me forever to read. I love this color on the back though. I don't know why. Like I think it's so pretty, like this light blue, but not my favorite book, but yeah, that's this one. So the last book that I read in the month of October, and one of the most amazing books that I've ever read in my life, and I just want to tell you something before I introduce this book to you, because I feel like on BookTube, at least like one of the main reasons why I watch BookTube is so that I can see someone like fall in love with a book and see someone who finds an author that they absolutely love, right? Because I feel like that only happens, you know, ever so often. And I feel like I have found that author. So if you don't know, I read Eric Siegel's Love Story back in February, and then I read Doctors in the summer. And both of those books totally blew me away. And I was like, oh, I really like this author. Like, I want to keep reading books by him. So I ended up picking up Acts of Faith by Eric Siegel, and it's amazing. I mean, like, I think if I've loved 3 of his books, I can now call him like one of my favorite authors of all time, and I'm going to read everything he's ever written. I loved this book so much. It's a chunker, but like I like fly through it. Like he's one of the only authors whose books I feel like are too short. I mean, look at that. Like this book is like 540 pages, and if it was like 800 pages, I would have been much happier because I freaking love his writing. So this book is so good. So basically what it follows 3 stories. So Deborah and Daniel, who are siblings, and they grew up in a Hasidic Orthodox Jewish community, and they're the children of this like very famous and well-known rabbi. And then Timothy, who grows up kind of like near them in Brooklyn, but he's Catholic. And so basically how like the story unravels is that Timothy like throws a rock through the rabbi's window, and so kind of like as like a punishment, he has to come and be like the Shabbos Goy, I believe it's called, where it's basically like a non-Jewish person can come into the house and like turn off all the lights and all like the cookware and stuff. And so when he's coming over, he meets Deborah, and they have like this spark moment, but obviously they're not allowed to really talk to each other because not only do their faiths get in the way, but they're also of different faiths, and so like that's not really allowed. So anyway, the rabbi like walks in on them kind of like having this moment, and he gets really mad at Deborah, and he like sends her away to an Orthodox Jewish family in Israel to kind of like reform her and turn her into like this good Jewish girl and like prepare her to be a wife. And so it's basically like this epic love story of these like 2 people who like love each other but just can't be together because we have like an Orthodox Jewish girl or woman and Timothy who becomes a Catholic priest. So it's like it's just so freaking good. And then how Daniel gets involved is Daniel is Deborah's brother, and he is supposed to like follow in his father's footsteps and become like the next like big rabbi in their long line of rabbis. And he goes off to like rabbinical school, and then he takes a course at Columbia that kind of like opens him up to like the criticisms of religion, and he starts like rethinking a lot of the things that he's learned. And this is kind of like a common theme in the novel between Daniel, Deborah, and Timothy, is like all of these things when it comes to faith that they've learned, they kind of start like rethinking it. One of the big ones is obviously like premarital sex, which is not allowed for Orthodox Jews, and is not allowed, sex is not allowed at all with a priest. You have to remain celibate your whole life. And so it talks, there's like a lot of commentary on that and how it tries to like suppress people's inner desires and like how that affects them in their lives. And so I freaking love this book. I mean, I'm not like really into like usually like religious types of books. Like I wouldn't, this book is like not like religious, but it does talk a lot about like faith, like both primarily Jewish faith and Catholicism. And I believe that the author is actually the son of a rabbi. So I feel like he definitely has insight of what it's actually like to be raised in a household where your father's a rabbi. But anyway, this book is so good. He writes like some of the most compelling characters. And I think I read like a thing about, sorry, can I just like rant about Eric Siegel all day? Like always see him talking about him way more than any other book, but his characters are so warm and you like genuinely root for them. And there's like pieces of yourself you can find in every single one of his characters. And I don't know, like I freaking love this book. I'm gonna read everything that Eric Siegel ever writes because I love him. I love the way he thinks. I love the way he's so incredibly intelligent, and his characters are like very complex and like well-rounded. And can you tell that I love it? It's so freaking good. So if this sounds interesting to you, definitely pick up Acts of Faith. And if you're not like really interested in religious topics and you're more of like a sciencey person, I definitely recommend Doctors, because they kind of carry like a similar storyline, but obviously like we have doctors and medicine and science and then religion. So it's like kind of the two different worlds. But Eric Siegel is absolutely amazing. He's incredible. So go pick up one of his books. You can always start with Love Story. It's his most famous work. Anyway, sorry, that was like a whole rant about Eric Siegel. Like can you just tell like how excited I am to find like a new favorite author? It's been incredible. So those are all of the books that I read in October. And okay, don't quote me on this, but I think for November, I think it'd be kind of fun to talk about the books as I go instead of having like these big sit downs at the end of the month and then just like sharing with you all the books that I read. So I'm gonna try to do that in November and freaking like finish this audiobook. You'll be shook about like the audiobook that I'm reading that I don't like. Like, I feel even bad saying that I don't like it, but just like stay tuned for that. I feel so bad. Anyway, those are the books that I read in October. Let me know in the comments down below, like not book related, but if you're going as something for Halloween, let me know in the comments. And if you're not, let me know what one of your favorite Halloween costumes you wore in the past was. And I'd love to hear from you. But thank you so much for getting all the way to the end of this video. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And I will see you guys in the next one. Love is